have to get to the point where money is not the sole / main focus in your business, because sometimes as entrepreneurs, we want to make as much money as possible. We want the highest margins and profitability in our business. But you have to ask yourself, okay, did I initially get in this business just for money, or am I chasing time freedom? In the beginning, you are a slave to your business. You're working for free, and there's no such thing as time freedom. If anything, when you work for yourself, you're working more hours than a traditional job.
He went full-time at 23, became a millionaire by 27, and helped generate over $128 million in e-com sales.
From Amazon seller to mentor to mastermind builder, featured on Fox, NBC, CEO Weekly, and more.
He's not just playing the game, he's teaching others how to win it.
Meet the CEO of FinComMastermind.com, Evanson Israel.
As an entrepreneur, when you first start a business, you are the business, right? I remember when I first started my e-commerce business, essentially, if I stopped working, everything stopped, because I was literally the business. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because when you first start out, you don't have the resources in order to duplicate yourself, to hire people and put infrastructure and processes in place. So essentially, in the beginning, you're not really running a business. The business is running you. Most of us get into business because we want to make a ton of money, and we want to have this, time freedom, as we always see on the internet or whatever the case may be. But the reality is, when you really start building a business, there's no such thing as immediate time freedom or making a ton of money. What most people don't realize is, and I think that's one of the reasons that people quit very early on, is that in the beginning, you are a slave to your business. You're working for free, and there's no such thing as time freedom. If anything, when you work for yourself, you're working more hours than a traditional job. As I started scaling my business, even though I was making a ton of money at the time, I quickly realized that I will never have the time freedom that I want until I learn to duplicate myself and put systems and processes in place. I will never have the time freedom that I'm looking for. And as an entrepreneur, if you don't put the systems and processes in place to make sure that your business runs without you, you will get to the point where you start hating your business. Like, I remember I would be constantly on my phone, right? Even though I was on vacation or spending time with family, because again, the business was running me. I wasn't running the business. So I would always be on my phone, checking the business, whether I'm out the country or whatever the case may be. And if your business cannot run without you, essentially it's a job, not a business. As you start to grow your business, if you don't put the necessary systems and processes in place for your business to operate without you, you will quickly realize that although you're making a lot of money, you will get to the point where you start, not enjoying your business or even hating your business, right? Because I got to the point where I was making a lot of money, but I was constantly on my phone, whether I was on vacation, whether I was at dinner, spending time with family, because essentially my business was running me. I didn't have the proper systems in place, and I didn't hire the necessary key people to operate the business without me being involved in the business. So I was a slave to the business. So I want to share with you 2 to 3 systems that I had to put in place to help my business operate without me, essentially firing myself within my own business and giving me the time freedom that I always wanted, which essentially is the reason that I built the business in the first place. So the first thing that I did would put SOPs in place. If you don't have the proper standard operating procedures in place, there's no way that you're going to be able to hire somebody and say, hey, this is, how you're supposed to do this, and this is how you're supposed to do that. So you have to put SOPs in place for every aspect of your business. So that way you can essentially replace yourself from that specific department in the business. Number 2, sales and or onboarding process. One of the things that I quickly realized in my business was there was a lot of tedious tasks that I was doing over and over and over again. And anything that I see myself starting to do over and over again, I'm like, okay, there's got to be a system and operating procedure in place for this specific part of the business. So one of the key things that we did was our onboarding process. So when we onboard a new client, there has to be specific standard operating procedures that the client goes through without us needing to be involved behind the scenes. Not saying that we're not going to support the client, but the client has to go through the onboarding process, and it has to be seamless. So as the entrepreneur, you have to ask yourself all the key questions that a client could potentially ask you, and you have to put that on your onboarding process to make it very seamless for the client. And we also automated our sales process as well too. That way our key salespeople can come in and know exactly how to properly communicate with the client, onboard the client, go through the sales process, and basically be able to properly represent our brand. All right, so step number 3, time blocking and delegation. Now, one of the hardest things to do as an entrepreneur is to say, okay, it's 5 o'clock, I'm gonna stop working. It is extremely difficult, especially if you have a passion for your business, because our brain is constantly running and we're always on, right? So one of the things that I try to do in my business is what's called time blocking, okay? So at a certain period of time, especially when I feel like my brain is already fried from going on, since the time I wake up in the morning, so I will block out specific times where I'm not, on the clock, so to speak, right? In order to do that, you have to have processes in place. You have to have the necessary people in place that can replace you during those time blockers, right? And you have to be really good at delegating certain tasks, okay? So there's certain things as an entrepreneur, as I always says, that are non-income producing activities. Anything that's a non-income producing activity, I essentially let somebody handle that, right? So I focus on the bigger picture, things that have to do with contracts, things that has to do, with, major issues in the business, infrastructure, capital utilization, things like that. Like, I want to focus on the key core components on the macro level of the business. I don't want to focus on the everyday minuscule tedious task of the business, because you can spend a lot of time in that area and you feel like, you're getting a lot done, but you're just keeping yourself busy. You're not really moving the needle forward, so to speak. So to keep it simple, in my business, anything that I find myself doing repeatedly, I immediately say to myself, hey, we need an SOP for this, because it doesn't make sense to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Essentially, you're wasting time, and a lot of people do this because they're too lazy to map out the infrastructure. Or, sometimes their brain don't operate that way. You need to get somebody involved in your business that can map out the infrastructure for you so you can focus on growing your business rather than, being stuck behind the scenes and being an employee of your business. You need to properly put these things in place so you can fire yourself and have the time freedom that you're looking for in your business. Otherwise, you're just going to be a high-end employee of your business, essentially. Yeah, I don't think there's a specific thing that I used to do manually in my business that's now automated. More so, what I look for in my business is all the tasks that I continuously repeat over and over again, right? Or not even me specifically, my team, right? Anything that I constantly see us doing over and over, rather it's, let's say it's a simple communication to a client, or, telling our clients to move capital from here to here, right? So I'll put a standard, like a template email in place for that, right? That way we can send it, and I'll say, hey, we need to send this email every Monday, right? And more so, looking at the business on the macro level and putting infrastructure in place for every single component of the business. So I think you need to look at the entire business overall. The first thing that I always do as an entrepreneur, right, is map out my business. Right? Map out, okay, what does marketing look like? What does sales look like? What does, most importantly, the back-end infrastructure looks like? Because a lot of entrepreneurs, they get killed on the back end. Anybody can go on social media, make a post, they can do marketing, they can, whatever, right? But the back-end operations of a business is usually where we get killed. Yeah, I think as entrepreneurs, the main reasons a lot of entrepreneurs get killed in business is they don't take the time to focus on the back-end infrastructure. And that's because, we're so focused on keeping the business alive and generating sales, right? Which is fine. But in order for your business to survive and for you to get out of the business essentially, and to be able to have the time freedom that essentially made you get involved, in entrepreneurship, you have to take the time to focus on infrastructure. So the biggest thing for me in my business is infrastructure, right? What does the client roadmap look like? Once the client says, yes, I want to get involved in the business, that's when the real work actually starts, right? Not the sale, right? A lot of people think it's a sale. Oh, I got to make a sale, get a client. That's nothing. It's the journey of the client, the onboarding the client, making sure they start properly, moving capital around, the entire process, all the way from bringing the client on to showing the client their first sale on Amazon in mapping out the whole journey is a huge deal for us. I think the biggest mindset shift needed to let go of control is, one, hiring the right key people in your business, and two, trusting those people with their ability to get the job done. The biggest thing for me in the beginning was that I felt like I could do everything better because I knew my business better, right? And as an entrepreneur, you feel like you know every component of your business and you can do a better job. And most of the time, that's true. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Because it is true. Nobody has more of a passion for your business than you do. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're able to efficiently manage your business and scale if you're stuck in the back end and micromanaging everybody that works for you. So you have to be able to trust people, and you have to be able to rely on them to get their job done. And also, you have to get to the point where money is not the sole/main focus in your business, because sometimes as entrepreneurs, we want to make as much money as possible. We want the highest margins and profitability in our business. But you have to ask yourself, okay, did I initially get in this business just for money, or am I chasing time freedom, right? And I didn't really realize that until I was actually already a multi-millionaire, because I just wanted to make more money, more and more money. And then I got to the point, I'm like, man, like I don't have any time. Like, I'm constantly working in my business, and it was frustrating at times, right? So you have to get to the point where you say, okay, I'm willing to make a little bit less profit and hire somebody to come in to replace me to buy my time back, because that's the main reason you got in business in the first place. So a key takeaway from this is freedom isn't found in the hustle. It's found in systems and processes. If your business still needs you to breathe, you're not free yet. You're either gonna build the system or you will become the system. So if you want help systemizing your business for real freedom, feel free to reach out.